Thank you for joining us today for this year's Martin Luther King Jr. holiday celebration. Now, we would like nothing more than to have you here on the campus of the National Civil Rights Museum. But alas, 2021 is not going to allow us to do that due to the COVID-19 virus. But we are promising you that what we are going to bring to you today is going to be just as energizing, just as informative as if you were here on our campus. This year would be Dr. King's 92nd birthday. And because we are doing this virtually, we thought that we would let you in behind the scenes to talk to people who typically work here at the National Civil Rights Museum as volunteers on our King holiday celebration. We also are going to just talk about birthdays and Dr. King's birthday and how they celebrated birthdays with Dr. King. We also think that this year it's really important that you learn a little bit more about Mrs. Coretta Scott King's involvement in the creation of Dr. King's birthday holiday celebration, as well as the fact that Mrs. King really has been the one who has created the legacy of Dr. King. So please, enjoy the programming that we have for you today. I'm certain that you will learn something that you didn't know, but you will also have the opportunity to enjoy some of that entertainment that you're used to receiving here when you're on the campus. Thanks again for joining us, and happy King Day.
So Martin Luther King was born in Jim Crow, Georgia, in Atlanta, Georgia, to be particular. So he was a child of segregation, but he was also a child of unique privilege in the sense that he was born to one of the Black elite, Black middle class families at the time, born right there on Auburn Avenue. So while he was subject to the restrictions of segregation, he couldn't go to the lunch counter at a Rich's department store, if you will. He also was able, because of his parents' occupation, his father was a preacher, his grandfather was a preacher at middle class status, to be sheltered to a certain extent from the harshest aspects of segregation. But he still saw them. He was still well aware. And he also came of age during the Great Depression. And so he saw how capitalism, the economic system, really failed not only African Americans, but all Americans to a certain extent, which informed the critique that he would have of the American economic system later in life.
You know, in King Day, it's January, it's cold, sometimes it's very rainy. I would just say a few years ago, it was very interesting. I mean, it was freezing out there, but it was just amazing to see the amount of people that lined up to come in to see the museum. Amazing to see the amount of volunteers that showed up in spite of the weather, ready to work. It was just an amazing item to be a part of. So I just think there have been several instances like that, but of course that one was just recent. I want to say it's like 2017 and 2016, but oh man, it was freezing out there, raining, and you know, and we still were able to put on a great show. The show went on, and people loved it. So for me, that was a great experience.
Martin Luther King, as a student, was brilliant. He was smart. He did well, particularly in his younger years. There are surviving essays and public speeches that he did. And so he was, even at a young age, showed a real dynamism for oratory. He enrolled at Morehouse College at the tender age of 15 and would spend 4 years there before graduating. And so he was definitely a smart, precocious, but he also at Morehouse College was like, yeah, I'm good. Let's figure out what else is going on in this world. And so he was sort of an average student at Morehouse, but he was also the mentee of the president of Morehouse College, Benjamin Elijah Mays. And so while he was kind of coming to his own, spreading his wings out from under his father's close watch while in college and kind of drifted with the studies a little bit, the foundation was there, and his intellect and his insight and his observational ability, his analysis was already in place. And so when he graduated from Morehouse and then would eventually head to Pennsylvania and then Boston to receive his advanced degrees, he was well prepared for the work ahead.
I started out with King Day. And once I started out volunteering at the museum, I wanted to get my daughter involved. So I started her volunteering when she was in high school in 2013, so that she could get that opportunity and that experience to know what it was to give back in the community. And that's what we've been doing since then. We've been volunteering at the National Civil Rights Museum.
At this counter, cause we live into America's, just look all around you. I mean, we tired of waiting. When will our freedom ring? Let it be known when you call Martin that they shot Dr. King. See, they were standing up by sitting down, and our resistance getting stronger, running hell to town. Our heads barely above water, but we'll never drown. You hear us coming, that's the movement, yeah, I love the sound. Okay, so come together right now over me. He got early warning, he got muddy water, he won mojo filter, he said 1
King's Christian beliefs evolve over time, but where he lands, where he settles, is with the social gospel. This idea that his Christian witness really was connected to being a servant of the Lord in the tradition of Daniel. And being a servant of the Lord meant serving people. And so he did not limit his Christian ministry solely to the gospel. He believed that you had to practice the gospel by doing good works for the least among us. And that meant working to end poverty, working to extend basic civil rights and human rights to African Americans. So there was a line between his civil rights activism and his Christian ministry, but both informed the other. And it was not a hard and fast line in which the two were separate.
That's very important to me. It's a symbol of my history, our history, American history. I volunteer for King Day because it is a way for me to give forward, to pay it forward, to pass it on, and to give of myself to the community, as well as share what I have to others. What we have, this history of the museum, is so important. So by volunteering there, it allows me to be a part of history while as absorbing the past history that we've had.
Wade in the water, wade in the water, children, wade in the water, 'cause God's gonna trouble the water. Oh, won't you wade in the water? Come on and wade in the water, children, wade in the water, 'cause God's gonna trouble the water. I stepped in the water and the water was cold. God's gonna trouble the water. You know it chilled my body and not my soul. God's gonna trouble the water. Come on and wade in the water. Oh, won't you wade in the water, children? Wade in the water, 'cause God's gonna trouble the water. Oh, won't you wade in the water? Come on and wade. Gonna trouble the water. I said that God's gonna trouble the water. You know that God's gonna trouble the water. Ooh, 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 ooh. You gotta keep marching on. You gotta keep marching on. You gotta keep marching. Keep marching on. You gotta keep marching on. Oh, keep marching on. Keep marching on. Oh, keep marching on. Keep marching on. How I got over. My soul is back and wonders how I got over. How I got over. My soul is back and wonders how I got over. How I got over. My soul is back and wonders how I got over. How I got over. My soul is back and wonders. My soul is back and wonders. Yeah, now my soul is back and wonders how I got over. How I got over. How I got over. How I got over. How I got over.
Dr. King was not born an activist. He was a reluctant activist, in fact. His first real foray into activism occurs in 1955 when he's tapped to serve as the leader of the Montgomery Improvement Association. But he's a young man at the time, just finishing up his dissertation, comes to Montgomery, Alabama to write his dissertation and finish it, married, a newlywed to Coretta Scott King, a new father, baby still in diapers, first baby still in diapers. So when the Montgomery bus boycott begins, he is very much, or when Rosa Parks is arrested, he is very much not thinking about leading a life of activism. He's thinking about becoming a preacher and pastoring his first church and all the duties that were that come along with that. But when Parks is arrested and E.D. Nixon and others convene this initial meeting of leaders in Montgomery, he is tapped. E.D. Nixon and others look to him in particular, in part because he was new. He hadn't been in Montgomery long enough to develop these political loyalties and alliances and allegiances within the black middle class, within the black leadership class. He hadn't been there long enough to be corrupted by white politicians and white power brokers. And he was also young enough to be foolish enough to take this leadership role. And that's no small thing as well. But when he was asked, he was like, he almost, you could see him in a chair, right, in the back of a meeting hall saying, whoa, I didn't sign up for this. And he asked, essentially he asked for a little time when that initial call is made. And he has to think about it. He has to pray about it. But he eventually answers the call, much like he answered the call to preach. He answers the call to be an activist.
Yeah, I volunteered at the museum because I believe in the mission of the museum, specifically educating and serving as a catalyst to inspire positive change, I think is how the mission statement goes. So I believe in that mission. The activities, for one, are incredible. Music, the food, the community engagement, seeing how people interact with each other. The patience while waiting in the long lines has always kind of inspired me, right? To see a better side of people.
I was born by the river in a little tent. Oh, and just like the river I've been running ever since. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change gon' come. Oh, yes it will. It's been too hard living, but I'm afraid to die, 'cause I don't know what's up there beyond the sky. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change gon' come. Oh, yes it will. I go to the movie and I go downtown. Somebody keep telling me don't hang around. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change gon' come. Oh, yes it will. Then I go to my brother. I said, brother, brother, help me please. But he winds up knocking me back down on my knees. Oh, there's been times that I thought I could last for long. Now I think I'm able to carry on. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change gon' come. Oh, yes, it will.
And we were standing at the fence, and you could walk through, but it's only for employees, only volunteers, only to walk through these access, but everyone else that was visiting to go around. These little kids got off and they were speaking, hey, how you doing, everything. And they was in, in a moment looking around and saw the sign and said, we're here, y'all, we're here. And, and the kid was like looking at us like, we're going to let us come through. I said, no, young man. I said, you had to go around that way. He said, wait a minute, you're going to stop and have me go all the way around so I can get myself educated and go in this building? You're going to make me go the long way like everyone else? I said, yeah, we have to. And he was like, oh, man, I'm ready to go see it now. I'm like, well, you got to go around and say, well, sir, thank you. And I appreciate what you're doing. And for a kid to tell me that, appreciate what I'm doing ahead, that lets me know that our future is safe for kids like him that's growing up and for him wanting to go in. And he said, come on, y'all, let's go this way, because the big guy said we have to go around. But him to have the knowledge, and he's only about 10 or 11 years, about 9 or 10 years old. And having a conversation like that, it was really awesome.
Silas found in jail, had no money for the golden bill. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on, hold on. To shout, doors popped open and all walked out. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on, hold on, hold on. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on, hold on, hold on. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on. Well, the only chains we can stand are the chains from hand in hand. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on. Got my hand on the freedom plow. I wouldn't take nothing from a journey now. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on. Hold on. Hold on.
last 5 years of King's life are really critical to understanding King's politics, King's philosophy, his approach to social change. It's important that we recognize and acknowledge that King is an evolving thinker. Too often we freeze him on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial during the March on Washington as though that was his first thought and his last thought. No, that was just a thought in this much longer journey and philosophical evolution, in part because after 63, you have so many critical events. After the March on Washington comes on the heels of the Birmingham campaign. The next year we have St. Augustine campaign that's connected to the Civil Rights Act. Selma in 65. In 66, he's in Chicago, expanding and thinking about how to end housing discrimination and segregation in urban centers. Black Power drops, and we find him in Mississippi with James Meredith and Stokely Carmichael. And now he's thinking about supportive of the idea of Black political empowerment, although he's critical of the particular slogan. And of course, in 67, we find him in New York at Riverside Church offering this stinging critique of the Vietnam War and offering a critique of America, pointing out its three principal evils, its triple evils of racism, militarism, and capitalism. And then, of course, finally, we find him in the last year of his life in Memphis, Tennessee, working in concert in a support capacity for the sanitation workers, advocating that all labor had dignity, and then not getting to live long enough to see his final campaign come into being, which was the Poor People's Campaign, an effort to draw attention to poverty in the nation. So the last 5 years, the last 3 to 5 years of King's life are critical. And it's important that we take time to study and review them because in those 5 years is when we see that final blueprint for building a fair and just society really crystallizing in King's mind and then being offered in his speeches and the final texts that he writes. Where do we go from here, chaos or community?
My fondest memory would have to be my very first time volunteering for King Day. And I say this because it was the coldest day of the year. I mean, in years. And here I am. But I woke up that morning so excited and so proud to do what I was about to do that I did not even dress appropriately for that day. But that did not damper my enthusiasm. My first job was actually putting wristbands on people, so I had an outdoor job. But that I was so excited, and just to see the enjoyment of the people, the spirit, it was just like something was there. And every King Day, it's like that. It's a spirit that you can't even, imagine.
Keep on pushing.
reach that higher goal. I know I can make it with just a little bit of soul. Yeah, 'cause I've got my strength and it don't make sense not to keep on pushing. Look, 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 look yonder. What's that I see? Great big stone wall stand there ahead of me. But I've got my pride and I move the wall aside just to keep on pushing.
I volunteer for the museum because it gives me an opportunity to give back to my community and in hopes that it would make a difference to someone.
On April 3rd, 1968, King is the most despised person in America. On April 4th, 1968, he is killed by an assassin. On April 5th, President Lyndon Johnson is coming out and singing his praises. And from that moment onward, we will see a reimagining of King in many ways, building towards and after the King holiday, but a reimagining of King that makes him more palatable for many white people in America. We see it becomes convenient, and others have said, dead men make convenient heroes because they're not able to critique the ways in which they're being discussed and framed. And he becomes this sort of convenient person for Americans and white Americans in particular, when you begin to cherry pick his statements, his philosophy, and suddenly you're able to uphold or shine a light on King's "I Have a Dream" speech, focusing only on those three little words, "I have a dream," and his vision for a society that is colorblind, without acknowledging the first half of the speech, in which he's saying you can't get to a colorblind society without color conscious policies, that we have to critique police brutality, that we have to provide the resources that are due African Americans for the historic discrimination that they have faced. So we have created in King this sort of comfortable character that makes us want to pretend as though we have gotten a lot further in this country, in this journey towards a fair and equitable society, than we actually have. That's a function of favoring nostalgia over history, and we have a fascination with nostalgia, things that make us comfortable, in the present, and we still bristle at the hard history of the past.
Even though we work all day and we end up being very tired at the end of the day, it is so worthwhile seeing the faces of our guests who come through, who've never been to the museum, and realize all that the museum has to offer. And I feel like people leave motivated as well. They leave motivated to learn more, to do more, and to just be a help in society.
My dear fellow clergymen, you may well ask, why direct action? Why sit-ins, marches, and so forth? Nonviolent direct action seeks to create such a crisis and foster such a tension that a community which has constantly refused to negotiate is forced to confront the issue. For years now I have heard the word wait. This wait has almost always meant never. We must come to see that justice too long delayed is justice denied. The Negro's great stumbling block in his stride toward freedom is not the white citizens' counselor or the Ku Klux Klaner, but the white moderate who is more devoted to order than to justice. Abused and scorned though we may be, our destiny is tied up with America's destiny. For more than 2 centuries, our forebears labored in this country without wages. They made cotton king. They built the homes of their masters while suffering gross injustice and shameful humiliation. If the inexpressible cruelties of slavery could not stop us, the opposition we now face will surely fail. Let us all hope that the dark clouds of racial prejudice will soon pass away and the deep fog of misunderstanding will be lifted from our fear-drenched communities, and in some not too distant tomorrow, the radiant stars of love and brotherhood will shine over our great nation with all their scintillating beauty. Yours for the cause of peace and brotherhood, Martin Luther King, Jr.
We ain't even got a huddle, cause everything ain't bad. Sometimes you gotta get in good trouble. Missing pieces to the puzzle, what a year made it through the rubble. Man, they treat us like a dog, but you never ever put us in a muzzle. Man, they really wanna break us down, they don't understand we can take that. Cause if we lose 9 times on the 10th time, still coming right back. You cannot erase the history, cause we still gonna give you straight facts. Never ever gonna change, never gonna change. Man, I love being black, son. Justice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. So if you see something strange happening, speak up, act like you care. We ain't got no other options. Time for action, no more watching. Ready for the real change, so we fight the power. I ain't talking boxing. Every single time I promise all they wanna do is tell us what we should've did. But when your skin look like mine, you already guilty as a little kid. I don't know how much more I can take, so we gotta pray. Getting tired of the darkness. I could really use a brighter day. Everybody knows. Some good trouble. Yeah, I'm here. Everybody knows I'm here. Getting some good trouble. Good trouble. Trouble.
Coretta Scott King is the central figure, the driving force behind what will become the King holiday. It's important to recognize that Coretta Scott King certainly is the wife of Dr. Martin Luther King, But two things are important to recognize and acknowledge. One, she was an activist in her own right, a graduate of Antioch College, which has in Yellow Springs, Ohio, which has a radical tradition of critiquing society. She was a trained classical singer who, during the movement, would contribute in part by having fundraisers, concert fundraisers for the movement. So we see that she, as an activist with a clear philosophical vision that wasn't necessarily at odds with King, but in many ways was ahead of him on LGBTQ issues at the time, on the critique of war and nuclear proliferation. These are things that Coretta Scott King had embraced. So she's an activist in her own right, and she's also King's partner. She's someone that King could talk to, not only about the personal affairs of family, but also about the philosophical things that he was wrestling with. When his home is first bombed, when their home was first bombed in Montgomery, Alabama in 1956, January 56, you know, King accepts armed self-defense, right? Yeah, our house has been under assault. Yeah, I'm good, brothers. Y'all, y'all can hang out. And then after, you know, a little bit of time, Coretta pulls him aside and is like, you know, I'm not comfortable with this. You know, I believe in nonviolence, and it shouldn't just be a philosophy. It should be a way of life, and we have to practice it and we have to model it. And then King, you know, after some prayerful thought, you know, agrees, and then they, you know, sort of part ways with that armed self-defense contingent. Although later on, in places like Mississippi, when brothers like the Deacons of Defense show up in a march, King wasn't. He was like, ah, y'all cool, right? I mean, so he was still, you know, wrestling. But it just goes to say that, you know, they were partners, and she, in some instances, is pulling him along in different directions. And so after he dies, she is also the one who is interested in preserving and extending his legacy. Even while he was alive, she was the one who took the initiative to preserve papers, to make the documentary record. So she had this vision that, you know, in order to extend their work together, it was important to preserve his work and their work while he was alive. And so she was in a position to immediately begin to build an infrastructure to extend his legacy, that being the Martin Luther King Center for Nonviolence in Atlanta, Georgia. But then a part of extending the legacy was also getting this national holiday, which at the time you think is crazy, because I mean, what you gonna get a national holiday for a Black person, somebody who just got killed and was the most despised American in the United States? But she was like, no, it's about him, yes, in his name, but it's about what he stood for, what he fought for, and what he died for. And she stayed on that with dogged determination for almost 2 decades. Before we get a decade and a half before we get Ronald Reagan to sign on, and then the holiday comes into being as a day of service, evolves into a day of service, is what it should be, to promote not just King, but to promote what he stood for and what he died for.
It's a team effort. My wife and I both volunteer. We decided one day to go down to volunteer for the one shift. And once we got down there and enjoyed it, so we continued to volunteer. So we're down there all day. And it gives us an opportunity to work with the museum staff and our leadership team, our volunteer leadership team, and assisting them in getting the visitors to the tour as expeditiously as we can.
So when the King holiday comes into being, it's important for us to acknowledge and to recognize that not everybody was on board. Not every state was on board. Arizona, for example, was one of the states that refused to acknowledge it in any way, shape, or form. We are just not going to acknowledge the King holiday as a holiday at the state level. And you had other states, and principally in the Deep South, that said, okay, you want to make it a federal holiday, then we're going to link it up in some way, shape, or form with our lost cause legacy, the legacy of white supremacy. We're not going to give you a King holiday without connecting it to this legacy of white supremacy. And so that's an important aspect of the holiday, because just like King wasn't embraced by everyone while he was alive, when the holiday comes into being, it's not embraced by everyone. And it reflects the deep white supremacist roots in the mid-1980s that were still with us just 15 or so years after King was killed by an assassin's bullet. It has taken a quarter century for us to, for states. John McCain was the senator of Arizona who voted against it and eventually came around, meant decades later, for the states to say, you know what, we acknowledge at the state level the importance of this holiday and of King's life and his work, and we stand in support of it. But not all movement is forward progress. And so while, for 8 years, we saw the President of the United States, Barack Obama, and First Lady Michelle Obama taking the King holiday serious and engaged in acts of service, seeing them with young people, seeing them, in performing acts of service on that day. We spent the last 4 years looking at a president who could care less about what the holiday meant. So it is still still a contested legacy and still a contested holiday in that sense. And there's still more work to be done to make sure that everyone appreciates what it's about, just as there's still more work to be done to make sure that everyone appreciates what King was about.
I was a volunteer prior to becoming the volunteer manager at the museum since 2009. And actually my first volunteer experience was for King Day. As far as King Day is concerned, it's once again my largest volunteer effort. And it would not be possible without each person donating their time and talent. And we are just so, so grateful for all of the volunteers and all of the sponsors and organizations that come and help us make each King Day a success. And even though it's a virtual King Day, we want to say thank you for your service. And if it was not the COVID-19 and we were not virtual, I know that we would have just, hundreds and hundreds of volunteers and thousands of people coming to the museum for King Day.
King offers us a living legacy. His activism left us a blueprint for how to create a fair and just society. And as we move out of 2020 and into 2021, into the third decade of the new century, I think that blueprint is as relevant today as it ever has been. We just have to take the time to study his words and his works, and then actualize that roadmap for creating a fair and just society that he left us.
It doesn't make much sense. There ought to be a law against anyone who takes offense at a day in your celebration. 'Cause I know in our minds that there should be a time that we can set aside to show just how much we love you. And I'm sure you would agree, but we fit more perfectly than to have a work party on the day you came to be. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday. Why has there never been a holiday, yeah, where we can celebrate it all?
Thank you for joining us for this year's King Day virtual celebration. We hope you learned something, enjoyed the music, or our story time. We hope that we can be together again in 2022. Thank you for supporting the museum in this difficult time, and please remember to donate to us at civilrightsmuseum.org.
Yeah.